What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel, and I hope you consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm not only going to be giving my reaction and review of Tyler Perry's latest dramatic thriller, Divorce in the Black, I'm also going to be talking about the changes I would have made to the film to improve the story. And just so you guys know, this video will contain spoilers, so if you haven't gotten around to seeing this film yet and you don't want to know anything that happens in it, you might want to exit this video now. And with that being said, no more wasting time. Let's get into it. Divorce in the Black, marketed as Tyler Perry's Divorce in the Black, is an American thriller drama film written, produced, and directed by Tyler Perry. It stars Meagan Good, who also produced, Corey Hardick, Joseph Lee Anderson, Taylor Polidor, Shannon Wallace, Richard Lawson, and Debbie Morgan. And the film was released on Amazon Prime Video back on July 11th of this year. Now, at the time of the making of this video, the movie still has an impossible to believe 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's based on 17 critic reviews, with an audience score of 74%, and that's based on over 1,000 verified ratings. The film still doesn't have a Metascore, even after all this time, because it doesn't have the required 4 critic reviews in order to qualify for one, which is telling. But it has a meager user score of 2.8, and that's based on only 6 user ratings. And finally, the film has a 4.5 out of 10 on IMDb with 3,000 ratings, approximately. So listen, I'm going to start by stating that this film was too long, by damn near an hour or so. And primarily it was because the narrative arc of this story is a discombobulated mess. Let's start with the opening image, the completely unnecessary funeral scene in the church that was written primarily for shock value because, 2 scenes later, the Bertrands, the extraneous family in this story, just buried their brother on their own land next to their other Bertrand family members. And I just kept thinking to myself, if that's the case, then the film could have just started there with an intimate ceremony with just the Bertrand family. But then if Tyler Perry had done that, then you wouldn't get the scene where the Bertrand brothers dragged their dead brother's body out of a casket in front of a church full of people at a funeral. It was just crazy. And I hated this scene because it was just too much, especially right at the beginning of the film. And it turned the Bertrand family and Dallas, most of all, essentially into cartoon characters. I believe that even an antagonist in a film should be somewhat relatable, and Dallas's character, simply put, was not. Mostly because Tyler Perry did what he always does to his male antagonists. He stacked so many undesirable and abhorrent character traits on them so that he can essentially do to them whatever he wants in the end with no regard for their humanity. Like, why did Dallas have to put hands on Ava's mother and beat up her father to get shot at the end of the film? I think him beating Ava would have been more than enough to get us to the conclusion that we ended up getting, but I digress. I also thought that Tyler Perry made a major narrative mistake when it came to Dallas's character arc, and it really seriously impacted the flow of the film and the story that we were being told. He had Dallas be the one to facilitate the divorce between he and Ava. Now, Ava was presented to us as a Christian woman who believes wholeheartedly in marriage and thereby doesn't want to give up on her marriage despite being treated horribly by her husband. But by having Dallas demand the divorce instead of Ava, Perry made Ava naive to the point where we, the audience, can't help but care less about her well-being because she seems uninterested in protecting it herself. And it makes Dallas's actions after the divorce is granted much more difficult to understand than it ever should have been. It would have been much cleaner to start the story with the small funeral on the Bertrand's land, followed by a scene that shows us that Ava and Dallas's marriage is not a good one. We could have then maybe had a conversation between Ava and her friend Rona about the state of her marriage and have Rona tell Ava that she needed to leave Dallas. Now, maybe because of logistics, that could have been a phone call, but still. Then we could have had the scene at the bar where Ava runs into Benji, because they're in Dallas and Ava's hometown, small town. And she and Dallas could have gone back home to Atlanta where they live. And maybe Dallas could have put hands on her at that point and maybe even badly injured her, causing for her to demand for a divorce. That would have just made so much more sense than what we got. She could have then left home for a few days in Act 2, just like she did in the film, and talked to her parents about everything. And since she was so marriage-minded, maybe she could have even gotten her parents to kind of co-sign her decision on getting the divorce. And then at the end of Act 2, she could have simply come back to Atlanta and had the papers signed, with an attorney. Then in Act 3, Dallas could have just began stalking her. Her father comes to town and installs the cameras and then leaves her the guns. And the action ramps up in the finale until finally Ava has no choice but to kill Dallas. Easy peasy, right? But no, we had to get all this extra stuff that just didn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Like, I believe most of Benji's scenes were unnecessary because he was essentially relegated to a plot device, which I don't have an issue with, right? Except for the fact that what Tyler Perry showed us led us to believe something completely different. So, given how the film ended up, we just needed Benji to be the catalyst that led to Ava and Dallas's divorce, and maybe hang around just long enough for Dallas to assume that he was the reason, and then he could have simply gotten out the way because he wasn't Ava's savior. In this film, Ava ended up having to save herself, which means the conflict was between, simply put, Ava and Dallas, and no one else. And maybe you could have Benji show up again at the end of the film and help Ava pick up the pieces after Dallas was dead, and kind of give us some hope that maybe her and Benji could end up together after, everything kind of settles a bit. Those changes alone would have shortened the movie by at least 20 minutes or so. And the bigger question, and just as big of a question, was why did Jim have to be an adulterer? It had absolutely no bearing on the story we were being told, and we didn't even get to see it play out between he and Rona. So I just didn't understand why, Tyler Perry decided to include that in the story. In fact, I'll go on record and say I didn't even like Jim being Dallas's friend, because it's never really explained how any of that came to be. Dallas is from the same place that Ava is from, so him having friends from back home is one thing. But Dallas and Jim being friends was weird, and notice what I said, friends. I completely understand that Jim may have been cool with Dallas because their wives were friends, but in the film, Dallas explains that Jim is his friend, as though they would have been tight even if their wives were not. And I think Jim being friends with a man who beats up on his wife like that, kind of besmirches his character unnecessarily. But again, that's just me. Now, as I've stated, Ava's father also did way too much in this film. All he was really needed for was to be there for Ava when she came home in Act 2, and then help her set up the cameras and give her the guns for protection, once things got out of hand. And that's it. But there he was getting beat up and shot and all kinds of foolishness. And I was just like, what is going on here? So, look, you might be thinking at this point, well, what should Tyler Perry have done instead? The name of this video is, you make a claim that you could have fixed this. What would you have done? So this is all really quite simple. In Act 1, here's what we needed the story to do. Establish that Ava's in an abusive marriage, 1. 2, establish why she doesn't want to leave said marriage. 3, prescribe a catalyst that would eventually force her hand. Like I said again, after Ava sees Benji outside the bar, maybe Dallas takes her home and beats her within an inch of her life or something, putting her in the hospital. Her friend Rona would then convince Ava that she finally needs to leave Dallas, whether she wants to or not. The break into 2 would have been Ava calling Dallas and demanding a divorce. And then in Act 2, what we needed the story to do was the following. We needed Ava to go home and tell her parents what happened and seek their support in her decision to divorce her husband, which they would eventually grant. Maybe Benji comes around to check on her. He eventually gets her out of the house and the pair are seen out together. That second part's important, so somebody could take in a picture or something like that, just like they did in the actual movie. And then finally, she would leave and head back to Atlanta feeling refreshed and ready to move forward. And the break into 3 would have been Ava meeting Dallas to sign the divorce papers And like I said, with an attorney present, because in the movie, she didn't have an attorney. And I thought that was just kind of, I don't understand what Tyler Perry was trying to tell us by having her not show up with an attorney to get a divorce, but okay. And then in Act 3, the story simply needed to go as follows. Dallas finds out that Ava was out with Benji back home, and he becomes convinced that she was cheating on him the whole time they were married. Number 2, Dallas breaks into her home and threatens her, and we don't need Benji for that. We didn't need Benji to beat him up or be there sleeping with Ava. None of those things needed to happen. We just needed Dallas to break into the home and threaten her. And then 3, Alice's father would come to Atlanta, change the locks, install the security system and the cameras, and then give her the guns for protection. And then in the finale, Ava is finally forced to kill Dallas. We didn't need Dallas putting hands on Ava's mother. We didn't need Dallas and his brothers beating up and shooting Ava's father. We didn't need Benji to beat up Dallas because, again, this film was not about whether or not Dallas would save Ava. It was about whether Ava could find it within herself to save herself. I don't think Ava should have slept with Benji either because, like I said, she spent the whole film telling him that she didn't have room for him. So you're telling him you don't have room for him while sleeping with him. And her and Benji don't even end up together. So again, I just thought it was unnecessary fodder. And while we spent all that time dealing with things that did not matter, we missed out on a lot of things that did. Like, what did Dallas do for a living? He mentioned being fired from his job, but we never actually saw him there. We did see Ava at hers. And what did Dallas's family do to him exactly that messed him up so badly? Clearly, that was a part of the reason that Ava didn't want to leave him, but we never really learned exactly what that was that traumatized him so. Or I think we may have. I think something about him having to kill his dad or something like that. So I may be a little off about that. But the point is that it was, if we did learn that, it was run over so quickly that it ended up not really mattering a whole lot in the narrative. So don't fact check me on that when this video is being made after having watched the film some time ago. So I might be a little off about that. But the point is that whatever Dallas did should have been a much larger point in the narrative, and it was not. Now, overall, I'd give this film like a 30%, or a 3.0 if you're thinking IMDb score, making it the lowest rated film on my channel so far. Now, look, Tyler Perry has been feeding black audiences variations of the same story over and over for the past 2 decades or so, with unrealistic and outlandish scenes depicting black characters that lack authenticity. And I really wish he would show us something different at this point. Because a black filmmaker with the resources that he has could do so much for black actors and the discourse within the black community, but instead he just churns out mid-budget black exploitation films that leave any black person who understands the difference between films made in the vein of reality television shows and strong narrative film work wondering what the hell they just watched. But what do you guys think? Have you seen Divorced in the Black yet? If you have, are you one of the few people that liked it? Or did you find yourself let down by yet another Tyler Perry special? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you that might be new to the channel, be sure to like and share this video. If you really like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. Also, be sure to go and check out themaskscreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write. I'll catch y'all on the next video.